Hi, everyone. This is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel, our Facebook group, and our newsletter, and our great sponsors, Phil Italy, Abiativa Casa, and Italy Rooting. And my guest today is Pasquale Pacchia, who runs a tourist and travel business in Calabria. So welcome, Pasquale. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Bob. Thank you.
So what's the name of your company again?
Visit Reggio Calabria, private and heritage tours to Calabria and southern Italy, basically. As far as Rome, we don't cover the north of Italy.
No, that's great. And you reminded me that we first connected, I guess, before COVID.
Yes, or I would say rather during the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
We are discussing the consequences, the possible consequences, effects on tourism caused by COVID.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been that long ago. And like I mentioned, we've made a couple of trips to Italy since then. And my Calabria connection is Montebello. And
Montebello Ionico, yes.
Yeah, a small place way up in the mountains there.
Yes, I know, on the southern part of the Aspromonte Mountains.
So where's your family from?
Okay, personally, I was born and raised in Reggio Calabria, but my father was from Monasterace, the last village in the province of Reggio Calabria on the Ionian side. Today, it's part of the metropolitan area of Reggio Calabria. On my mother's side, my mother was from Locri, the ancient Locri, the Greek city. Even today, you can admire the Greek city, the ruins of the Greek city. So I'm Calabrian.
I mean, I don't know if I could call myself Calabrian or not, because my third great grandfather, he was the Count of Montebello, but I don't know if he was originally from there, or I don't know how they came about.
But you certainly have Italian origins, so you're certainly Calabrese as well. I can feel it.
Yeah, and we really enjoyed Montebello and Fossato because they really treated us
great.
Like we were kings.
Yes, we have the Calabrian people have the sense of hospitality. That's back since probably Roman Greek times. I was impressed when once in Stilo, a very poor guy, he was a peasant, but he looked very poor. And he gave us some fruits, very wonderful peaches, I guess, if I'm not mistaken. So it was all he had, and he gave it to us. I was really impressed. I really felt emotional because people really keep the sense of hospitality. Really, it's incredible. People are, you must live it to understand it, because otherwise it's even difficult to understand.
Yeah. They did a whole big spread for us, and I tell people everything was homemade. Nothing was bought from the store.
But globalization, things are changing. Calabrian food is still probably one of the most genuine foods on earth. Things are changing. More and more with the industrialization of products. But still, we resist. We resist with with genuine natural. If you, particularly in the villages, you can still have a genuine food.
Yeah, and what was funny about it is it was so matter of fact with them that everything was made there. That's foreign to Western America because nobody makes anything anymore.
Have you tried macaroni kusuko rakarapa? Did you try macaroni with goat sauce?
No, we didn't have that. With that, we didn't have. But it's funny you say that because when we were there, the folk music guys, they sang Mangia Grappa.
Mangia grappa.
Yeah, the song. I had no idea what they were saying. I asked them. I wanted to play it on the guitar, and it's very simple because it's only a couple.
They're not. Have you ever tried nduja? Nduja.
That we tried. The
spreadable salami. Yes.
Yes.
It's become very popular. No longer Calabrese, but it's spread also, I guess, in the U.S. in many parts of Italy, and it's now no longer a Calabrese product because it became very popular. Yeah, the original one was from Spilinga, the Nduja from Spilinga. Yes.
Did you know Gianluca De Francesco?
Yes, we worked actually with Gianluca. We worked for several years together. He led several tours for me, and I was devastated when I learned what happened to him because really, believe me, I was really devastated. So such a great loss for Calabria's tourism. He was a terrific guide and tour operator. He had his own travel agency. It was simply fantastic, and
Yeah,
I couldn't believe my it when I heard it. And really, all the tourism, the tour guide community, the tour operators in Calabria were shocked by really. It will be missed. It will be
yeah.
greatly missed.
I never got to meet him in person when we did go to Calabria. He
Probably because it was very busy touring, so
yeah,
he used to tour
yeah,
all the time, so it was not so easy to catch up with him actually.
yeah.
But
But
he was simply such a great man, such really, and we shared the same passion, the passion for tourism, for assisting a guest, and we shared the same passion. We really shared the same passion. Really, that's it will be greatly missed. I couldn't believe my. Sometimes I think life is really unfair. It's really unfair, but what can you do?
yeah, and I felt the same way. We became good friends over the years, and I felt the same way. He was
It,
just
it,
very nice.
it was impossible not to be friends with Gianluca because he was such a lovable person. Even using the past seems to me absurd. Really. But so sad, so sad.
So I learned a lot from Calabria about him. But for people listening, what does Calabria have to offer? I mean, we love the South, but what does Calabria have to offer that the other regions don't?
Okay, if you ask me, people will think I'm biased, but
That's okay. That's fine.
but if you ask me, I can tell you that incredibly Calabria has it all. Has it all. Kilometers of still unspoiled coastline, mountains, breathtaking landscapes, genuine food, red wines that are a crime, really a crime. It's incredible. I can remember, and also many people probably don't know that even though in Calabria you can't find the Greek archaeological sites like in Sicily, but Calabria is probably the most Greek region in Italy. Even today, there are people. There is a community speaking Greek dialect. But unfortunately, over the centuries, because the temples were destroyed, they used the stones to build houses. And so today, there is not much left in comparison with other regions like, Sicily, Campania. But imagine that during the Middle Ages, scholars went to Calabria to study Greek. Because Calabria was part of the Eastern Roman Empire, among the other things, and that's why we had after the Greek colonization, the Magna Graecia times, centuries before Christ, approximately around the 7th, 8th century AD, a new wave of Byzantine monks came to Calabria because they were persecuted by, I guess it was Leon X, because they adored the icons. So in Calabria, you can find Greek monasteries like the ones you can find in the Greek monastic republic of Athos, on Mount Athos in Greece. For instance, I'm thinking of the monastery of Saint John Thyrestis in Bivongi, which is on the hills near Monasterace, or just think of the Cattolica of Stilo, and it's incredible. In Rossano, the Codex Purpurius. So there are so many. So Calabria was a crossroads of cultures and civilizations. The Greek, the Romans, the Byzantines, the Spanish, the Ottomans. So really, everybody came to Calabria. And if we talk about food, I can't forget once a highly reputed tour leader from Rome. I was accompanied to people from Argentina. I speak Spanish because my wife is Colombian. And he was talking to someone on the phone, and he said to this person, after eating 1 month in Calabria, I would not like to eat anywhere else. On another occasion, assisted Michael Switzer, the movie director of some episodes of Prison Breaks, and his wife. When I brought her, when I led her to the castle in Bova, she was admired the breathtaking landscape, and she said, "Wow, this is like being in a submarine at away." After a while, she thought it again, said, "No, no, this is even better than be in a submarine at the highway." Also, among the other things, I had in 2010, I had incredible honor of knowing I was one of the guides assisting Mr. Tony Bennett. Yes, yes, yes. I remember because his family was originally from Podargoni. It's a village on the hills of Reggio Calabria, on the hills of Gallico, which is a neighborhood in Reggio Calabria where my brothers live. And it was when I remember that when I met him at the Reggio Airport, Lamezia Terme Airport, sorry. I didn't. I must be honest with you. I didn't know him because in Italy it was not so popular. Maybe it was more popular in the US. But I must be honest with you. When I first met him at Lamezia Terme Airport, I shook hands with him. I didn't know him so much. He came with two troops, one from Rome, from the UK, because he was filming an album duets. And so he started singing right at the entrance of Podargoni's village, O Sole Mio Unplugged. Unplugged. And it was really, really a great and amazing experience. Chance of knowing very important people, VIPs from really from the US, from all over the world. And they were so handy. I was impressed. Even Tony Bennett was very much interested in Italian culture. His family originally was Benedetto. They turned it into Bennett. And he was asking me about Dante Alighieri, the Divine Comedy, La Divina Commedia. He was very curious about our culture. When we were on the bus, he was asking questions, and I could see that he was very much interested about his roots.
That wasn't his first trip to Italy, was it?
No, no. As far as I learned, he went to Calabria, to Italy on a yearly basis or so. I don't know, but it certainly wasn't his only trip. But it was the first time I met him, the first and the last time I met him, because then he was already an old man when we met. And so then he died after person. He wouldn't. When I realized I wasn't probably, I was calm, relaxed, because at first I didn't understand the enormity of his, how important he was. He was a star of the showbiz, the US showbiz. But when I realized, yes, I tried to keep calm, but really, really, it was very, very emotional experience when I realized who he was, because they told me he's a very, very important person. And in the night we had dinner in Sheila, the
Sheila
owner of the restaurant. I don't remember if it was Ubais, but the owner of the restaurant was on very friendly terms with him. So I understood that he used to go to visit quite often.
Yeah, Sheila is, for anybody listening, if you haven't been to Sheila, if you go to Calabria, it's a must.
Yes, Sheila, yes. Because crystal clear waters, because it's in the heart of the Straits of Messina. So the strong currents coming from the northern part and from the Tyrrhenian Sea, the Ionian Sea, they meet the strong, very powerful currents, and so there is a constant change of sea waters, which are always crystal clear, clean, and this originated in the midst of the myth of Sheila and Charybdis. Sheila was nymph by transformed into a monster, terrifying all the sailors of the ancient times because with their strong currents she would sink the ships. And also Charybdis on the Sicilian side was like a vortex into the sea that made it very difficult. Made navigation very difficult, particularly in Greek times with ancient ships. We know I actually graduated in Messina, and I can tell you at the end of the 80s, we would cross the Strait of Messina with these ferry boats, which were quite rusty, quite old. And when the sea was stormy, it was really quite scary. Fortunately, there is a short distance, but I would imagine how the Greek sailors, the sailors of ancient ships, would find it difficult to cross these very stormy waves when the weather is bad. It's really, it's really scary, scary. Fortunately, it's a short distance, so. But that's what originated the myth of Sheila and Charybdis.
Yeah, we took the ferry across, but it was the big one with all the cars on it that didn't move.
Yes,
Yeah.
Caronte tourist. You took Caronte tourist. Yes, indeed. But
That,
in winter, particularly in winter times, in winter it may be very stormy. In summertime, springtime, not so often. Quite when there is the wind blowing from Africa, the Scirocco wind. It's called Scirocco. Maybe it's stormy, but not very often in the good season.
yeah, and I mean, we still talk about it because I guess the main part of the town is up on the cliff there, and then you walk down to
Yes,
the
the
to the
village.
shore.
The village. But on this respect, um, why many villages are on the hills, phenomenon of twin villages, I would say, because the sea for many centuries was not a source of wealth for fishermen, because the sea was where the danger came from. The enemy could be the Turkish pirates, the Saracens. The Arabs settled for long periods in Sicily, and from Sicily they would lead quick raids on Calabria coastlines. Actually, if you see every 5 kilometers in the strategical areas of the coast, you will see that there is a watchtower to see if the enemy was coming. Consider that when the Roman originally, when the Roman Empire collapsed, was sacked by the barbarians in 476 AD. Europe, Italy knew centuries of anarchy, violence. Traveling from city to city was a real danger because it was all forest. Cities were fortified. So imagine that from the fall of the Roman Empire until the 1806, the advent of the French, the brother-in-law, Napoleon's brother-in-law, conquered Calabria for a while when there were the French in Italy. The last Arab Saracens raid was in 1806. So for centuries, Calabrian people, Calabresi saw the sea not as a source of wealth, but as a source of danger. Consider also that the the beaches there were marshes, they were unhealthy because it caused malaria. So that's why many villages were founded on the hills because for various reasons it was safer to stay on the hills rather than on the coast. That's why Calabrian cuisine even today is heavily based on products from the land, from products from fish based. Even though now things have changed, of course. If you go to Sheila Pizza, you can have great fish. Swordfish, which is the sandwich with swordfish, is a typical. But this was last only in the 20th century after the World War II. That the coastline was rebuilt. I remember I was a kid. When I was a kid, my mother, we visited Catanzaro Lido, where the late Gianluca lived. And it was really, there was nothing. Now it's like a tourist district. But in the 17, at the beginning of the 70s, I was just a kid. My mother brought me there, and she told me there's nothing here. It was only cost to see some house, maybe some sketch of. Today it's a tourist very area, very beautiful. But really, the villages on the coastline, on the coast, repopulated after World War II. Probably started to repopulate after World War II. That's why the main villages, the historic towns, are on the hills. For instance, to give you an example, my father's village, Monasterace, there is the village Monasterace Superiore, where you have the castle, all ancient old houses, and Gerace. Gerace means a hierax, which means a sparrow hawk. Looks like Gerace was founded by some refugees escaping from the coast because of Arab invasions, Saracens invasions, Turkish raids. That's why they founded Gerace on the hills. You know, you still have the Norman castle, all these things, ancient houses. Also, Calabria history for centuries, invasions.
Yeah, well,
Probably
that's like Rosetto Capuspulico.
Roseto Capospulico. Yes, we're
Yeah.
talking about the entire coastline, the entire southern Italy, not only in. Yes, the entire coastline was plagued by the constant Turkish invasions, which oftentimes.
Like you were saying before, the original town is way up on the cliff.
Yes, even today, many towns are many villages. It's called the phenomenon of twin villages. You have the village on the coast, which most of the times is the most recently built, and the village on the hills, which is the historic town. This is really how Calabria is the area is made of. So if you want to visit the most important villages, the highlights of the region, you will certainly need to drive uphill. I wouldn't. What we recommend is that Calabria, as I said, has it all, but the infrastructure is not that good, unfortunately, sadly. So, if you want to enjoy your Calabria trip, your Calabria tour to the fullest, do not think of using public transportation, because this could really turn your vacation into a nightmare. Sadly, it's a reality.
I always knew my roots were in southern Italy, but I never imagined how powerful it would feel to stand where my ancestors once lived. Thanks to Visit Reggio Calabria's heritage and genealogy tours, I uncovered family records, walked the same cobbled streets, and even met distant relatives. It wasn't just a vacation, it was a homecoming. If you're ready to rediscover where you come from, this journey is waiting for you in Reggio Calabria.
I noticed that after the pandemic, tourists, once they booked more private tours, like transportation with the English-speaking driver. I noticed that after the pandemic, though maybe because of the financial crisis, maybe many tourists tend to, if they can drive, hire their own car, do it yourself. Vacation. I noticed this phenomenon. We noticed with my colleagues this phenomenon that things have changed after the pandemic, and not for exactly for good. Even though in Reggio, thanks to Ryanair, many European tourists are flocking in the town. But yes, the pandemic has definitely left its mark on Italy's tourism. I would dare say. Maybe the most touristy areas are not so much affected, but maybe a region like Calabria, even though it's with all its infrastructural problem it has, should visited a lot more than it actually is. It's already okay, but the pandemic definitely left its mark. I think at least as far as we are concerned.
Yeah, I tell everyone that, though, especially, from Calabria and Sicily and Puglia and Campania, even if you don't know, if you know you're Calabrian, maybe you don't know the hometown, or if you know you're Sicilian, maybe you don't know the hometown. You still need to go to some of these smaller.
But okay, this is not only referred to Calabria, but if you want to enjoy your vacation to the fullest all over southern Italy, you need to have your own personal transportation. Yes, sure, there are places, many places can be visited by train, by bus, but it's not, the idea is like relaxing, staying in the back seat while someone is driving for you. Driving can be in the most busy periods, can be very stressful. So what would be the purpose of driving yourself? I would not recommend if you can enjoy your vacation to the fullest. People may think I'm biased, but I know the tour prices have risen, unfortunately, due to the international crisis, the rise of gasoline. And so it's no longer, I know that oftentimes, while before the pandemic, it wasn't an issue, tour prices were not an issue. After the pandemic, I noticed that not to many potential guests some potential guests told me this is more than we expected. My philosophy is maintaining, keeping the same quality standards, but I try to keep reasonable prices. But it's not always possible. Like if you need one minivan, one mini bus, two minivans, it's not always possible. So you must find a balance. But it's becoming increasingly difficult. But not as easy, not as smooth. Things are not smooth as before the pandemic. I remember the pandemic was in 2020. I remember in 2019 really was a great period in terms of tours we sold, the private tours we sold. And we had already several bookings for 2020. When the pandemic struck, tours were frozen. I had to come up with a plan B, like giving online lessons, online Italian lessons, because the private tours were simply frozen. It was a period to forget, really, really terrible. Fortunately, I had the resiliency in my life. I had the resiliency of always moving forward. So, I don't know why, but I get stronger in difficult times.
That's good. That's commendable for sure.
But it was very stressful. So, for instance, probably one of the reasons was too much stress. It has become extremely stressful, and so it's very, very difficult. Today, too much competition. Originally, Calabria was an unknown region, and now you have to compete with several. I can honestly say that we were pioneering in Calabria when people didn't even talk. Many people didn't even talk about. I can't say we were the first, but somehow the first to begin. For instance, I had the honor to bring you some of the global tour operators to Calabria, which were sending groups to Calabria. I want to give you names for privacy reasons, but they were really global tour operators from the US, and some of them were lost because of the pandemic. During the pandemic, it was shocking because some of them you had to refund some tours. It was really, well, let's forget it. Let's move forward to talking about something more interesting.
Well, I think what's nice about Calabria is it's still, unspoiled. I mean, we were in the north, and to your point, it was easier getting around because the trains were, going from Florence to Bologna, and even going to some of the side trips to Modena and Ferrara was very, very simple. You got on a train, half hour, you're there.
The north is the north.
But there's a million, every place you went, there's a million people. Where in the south, especially in Calabria, you could go to places and, that's more than any place. That's where I felt Italian, was in Calabria.
Compared to more touristy regions like, Toscana, Firenze, Venice, everybody.
Oh, Venice.
So these are very tourist areas, which, Calabria is like less way less touristy than these areas. But it's where you can find, not only in Calabria, also in Sardinia, Apulia, the most genuine Italy, the rural Italy. Probably you will learn more about Italy in rural areas rather than in urban areas. When I was a kid, at 7, I grew up in my parents obliged me to, because I was a kid, I wanted to stay with my friends in Reggio. They obliged me to 3 months in Monasterace to a vacation, to go to the seaside. And I learned, for instance, I could witness how they still made wine, like with feet and things. So I learned the real rural Calabrian life. We used to stay. Oftentimes, we stayed in a countryside house with no books, no pens. I was a student, a little student, and I wanted to write something. But in this countryside house, my uncles were peasants, and you could only have genuine food, uh, terrific red wine. My uncle was in his 70s, 80s. He fought World War II. He was prisoner to the British in Africa. And every time I was 7 years old, he brought at lunchtime a bottle of wine, a red wine. Believe me, it was a real nectar. As a kid, I learned to drink wine. And so unforgettable experiences. Now this is getting lost in a sense. It's no longer, but really, maybe we were better off when we were worse off in a sense. Maybe we were better when we were poor. Today, when we didn't have the technology and all this stuff, life ran more at man's pace than today. But really, I consider myself lucky because I really I was really lucky to grow up in this environment, eating healthy food, breathing healthy air, and all these things. Meeting, talking to genuine people. The best restaurants to me was my aunt's house. When I went there, she prepared incredibly delicious food. I remember once, she gave me a little slice of cheese. Horrible, horrible, like but when you tasted it, the taste was simply amazing. So really, I consider myself lucky because I really lived the genuine, the rural Italian life. And so I couldn't understand it when I was a kid. We had issues with my dad because my dad, you must we must stay to Monasterace. We must spend our holidays to Monasterace. But I was a kid. My friends were in Reggio. I didn't want to go. But now I regret it so much because it was really when you are a kid, maybe you don't understand such things.
Yeah, I wish 25 years ago, I wish I knew what I know now about my heritage and my roots and where everybody came from. We would probably own a house there or something there if I knew more back then.
Yes, I consider, Bob, that people who don't know about their heritage are people without identity. It's very sad not knowing where you're coming from because it will make it more difficult to know where you are going. Words, but I really consider that not being aware of your own cultural identity is really sad. I remember when I was a kid, I went to the seaside with my mom and dad. We crossed, along the way. We used to pick up figs from trees. My father knew everybody in the village, and they were friends with him. But on one day, one of the owners of the fig trees didn't recognize me. My dad, he almost shot them. More inconvenience. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. But everybody loved my dad because. And on the way, we crossed these ancient stones, which were the Greek archaeological sites of Kaolons. My dad, he was a nurse, paramedic, a nurse. He didn't know much about its own heritage. He generally told me these were stones dating back to the Greek times. So I mean, we used, I acquired self-awareness of my own heritage when I started working in the tourist business. I've been working for some time at the National Archaeological Museum of Reggio Calabria, showing the Riace warriors, the Bronzi di Riace, to people visiting in English, people from all over the world. So I can really say that I became aware of my own cultural identity when I got into the tourist business, because I noticed how I got into heritage tours, because the first people I assisted, they wanted to make connection with their family. So I remember on one occasion there was this guy from with the Arab origins. We visited the Colonia Superiore, and it was I had no experience. I started knocking at people's door, looking for connections, and that was they were really amazed. Then we found the place where his I guess it was great father worked. He was in the carpentry business, and everything we went to the small store where the carpentry tools were, and everything, the door was open and everything was untouched. No one in the village, imagine after decades, no one in the village touched anything, you know?
Wow.
Then no one, because there was this feeling of respect, not villages, people leave their door open, because no one would dare to enter your house, steal. And I remember, unfortunately, many of these villages are dying because, the Italian population is old. I remember when I was in the 70s. The main square in Monasterace was filled with sounds, kids screaming, yelling, kids. But I returned when I didn't go. I didn't visit for quite some time. But when I returned, the main square was nearly totally deserted. Really, it was so sad, that many villages in Italy, the young people go to work abroad, and only old people stay. It's really, it's a bit sad. It's a bit sad because Italian people are old. There is no, the birth rate is really uh, back below zero, I guess, very low birth rate. We are having heavily migration from Northern Africa. And so Italy has changed. It's no longer the Italy you knew. Italy is changing.
Yeah.
Definitely
Yeah.
changing.
I mean, we saw that in Fossato, where the whole street was just abandoned, and there was, like you said, there was still furniture in there and everything. It was sad. So before we go, if anybody wants to contact you, and
Yes, of course, through our website, www.visitregiocalabria.com or info@visitregiocalabria.
that's
And
fantastic.
that's and I wanted to, yes, that's how I got into the genealogy business. People, I know that Americans like to take the DNA test, but oddly enough, I never took it. But maybe, probably, if I took it, they would find Greek blood, Arab blood into my veins. It happened to me that when I was speaking Spanish, more than one person asked me, "Where are you from?" I'm Italian, from Southern. Are you sure you speak Spanish like an Arab? Probably that's because there must be some Turkish blood, maybe because of the constant invasions. But I will take the DNA testing.
And I say that people in Italy don't need to take a DNA test, because you could go to the cemetery and
You're not used to. Yes, right,
you have
right. That's
300 years
that's
in there.
parts of our culture. One last thing I would like to add. I would recommend many potential guests that are looking for the connect with their family origins. You need to understand that you must have the right information. Otherwise, for instance, if you're looking for a birth certificate, death certificate, many I noticed many think that the information is online on websites. While there are websites like Antenati, But unfortunately, the digitalization process in Calabria was never completed. So regrettably, many certificates, many documents are not available online. So you will have to look them to go directly at the source, because if you are lucky to find them, because consider that we had 2 wars, many documents, certificates might have been destroyed. We had earthquakes in Calabria. And so I recommend that don't start a genealogy research if you don't have accurate information, because you would end up losing, you might end up losing your money. And unfortunately, you need to also, if you apply for if you are asking from the certificates from the comuni, from registry offices, don't do it with a regular email. Buy a PEC email, posta elettronica certificata, certified email with legal value, because sadly, many administrations won't even answer non-PEC emails. So this is and also, we experienced problems like when I asked a guest, because, if you require documents, you need to be authorized by the person that is the certificates. Otherwise, we can't ask, they won't give certificates away to anyone showing up. You will need to authorize the person. So in some cases, some people didn't, I will never, I'm not asking for your ID, but at least your driving license you need to provide if you can travel to Italy, unless you are visiting yourself. You are being assisted by the guide, by the genealogist. But we had problems, we experienced problems like I will never provide my driving license, my ID, because they are afraid to be scanned. But in this way, it will become impossible to do the documents request genealogy research. So my advice to people who wanted to connect to their families needing certificates is don't do it if you have a very, very generic information, wrong information, because you will lose time, waste time and money, and you will not be able to to find your documents, because in many villages maybe last names, there are so many last names, but you will need to know which really belongs to your family. So it's better not to know what you are looking for, because otherwise it will be, you might end up thinking, oh, they scammed was scammed. On various occasions we had to refund money, because also sadly some administrations are not so cooperative in a sense. I don't know if it's, and in some cases we had to refund money as a result of that. So my advice is don't start a genealogy research at certificate request if you don't have at least the full name. It would be better if you had the full date, but at least the full name, that you provide the information which is relevant to the research. That's it.
Yeah,
That's
no,
what I wanted to say.
that's really good advice. And yeah, I tell people the same thing. I tell them the same thing. Well, Pasquale, thanks again. I appreciate you being on. Great conversation.
Very special day. Wish you a very special day. Take
Uh,
care.